then sometimes some of the incidents that happen and what we hear is so nauseating. A woman marrying her own son, even kissing the son. A woman marrying a tree, marrying animals. This is the kind of life we want to welcome into society. No wonder it's a biblical prophecy that is actually repeating what happened during Sodom and Gomorrah, and God had to burn down the city. In fact, this is happening, just provoking the wrath of God. But these people are not aware. So that's the kind of society they want to drag all of us into. And in fact, if nothing is done about this, things are getting wild and crazy. That this world will no longer be a decent place to actually be in. And it's sad. The whole issue of LGBTQ or whatever evil rise that has been something that has been a topical issue globally. And then people that want moral uprightness and then are more religious frown strongly upon it. And those that think it's a way of inclusiveness think that it should be allowed into the integrated into the society and added to the societal fabric. And what some of us might not know is that this thing has existed with us for some decades now, and it has been with us silently. Now, how did this whole thing start? In fact, it started way back in the 1960s. And the 1960s was an era where people got up to fight for the right to belong to this organization, the right to belong to that organization, or the right to do whatever they want to do with their bodies. In fact, the 1960s witnessed one of the most craziest and rebellious eras that the world has ever witnessed. And that is where this LGBTQ++ took its root from. And in fact, that era brought about both its positive aspect and then the negative repercussion that we are battling with today. One other thing that we might not know is that this whole LGBTQ++ is deeply rooted politically. In fact, there's a whole political system that is well grounded in it. And it's as well having a strong spiritual connection and making it very difficult for an individual, a country, or a group to really fight against it. Now, why am I making this video? Recently, the Parliament of Ghana passed a bill that seeks to criminalize LGBTQ++ and 8 other related connections, and is currently before the president, awaiting for his signature of approval. And what we don't know is that the president is in a tight corner right now because there are powers that are above him. In fact, the political system, there's a whole political system that controls things and makes him helpless at this moment to be able to make a bold decision in signing this document. Now, let's look at the political connection with this whole issue of LGBTQ++. And as we know, whatever happens in the US has a rippling effect globally. Whatever happens in the US has a very serious repercussion, whether negative or positive, in the world. And as we know, the US has been a world superpower since the 19th century, and they've remained so for over ages and up to now. And they've leveraged on this status as world superpower to roll out, in fact, some of the most dangerous, satanic, and evil institutions and organizations that we can imagine. In fact, organizations and institutions like the UN, the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, and NATO, among others. People might think that these groups and organizations are for the welfare of humanity. But hey, the satanic and evil agenda they have under their sleeves, in fact, is scary. And they are behind some of these policies, rolling them out just for their own purpose. And they are behind this LGBTQ++ abortion right or whatever evil right that you can think of. As we also know, the US has two political parties, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. In fact, the Democrat Party is more in alignment with some of these evil policies. In fact, the Republican Party seemingly distance themselves from some of these evil policies. And that's why when you see that anytime the Democrat Party is in power, some of these things start showing up. This is why the world should support Trump.
This is why I voted for Trump.
And in fact, with the Democrat Party, if you're not someone that supports some of these policies, it will be very, very difficult for you to rise to become president of the United States. Now, someone might think that I'm just making baseless or saying things out of my mind or just coming out with conspiracy theories. If you think so, let's look at what happened during the Obama regime. On June 26, 2015, the LGBTQ++ won a case in court which seeks to legalize marriage rights and make it legal for sexes to be able to marry. That is male, male, female, female. And in fact, when they won the case that night, the White House was immediately lit with the colors of this LGBTQ++ community. And subsequently, in the morning, President Obama addressed the nation. And this is what he has to say. Let's watch the video.
Good morning. This morning, the Supreme Court recognized that the Constitution guarantees marriage equality. This ruling will strengthen all of our communities by offering to all loving same-sex couples the dignity of marriage across this great land. It's a victory for gay and lesbian couples who have fought so long for their basic civil rights. My administration has been guided by that idea.
And that again, the coming year on the same June, that is 24 June 2016, President Obama designated a monument known as a Monument for Modern Day LGBTQ++ Civil Rights Movement. And then on that day, this is what he said. Let's watch that video too as well.
Back in 1969, as a turbulent decade was winding down, the Stonewall Inn was a popular gathering place for New York City's LGBT community. At the time, being gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender was considered obscene, illegal, even a mental illness. One night, police raided the bar and started arresting folks. Raids like these were nothing new, but this time the patrons had had enough, so they stood up and spoke out. The riots became protests. The protests became a movement. The movement ultimately became an integral part of America. So this week, I'm designating the Stonewall National Monument as the newest addition to America's national park system. Stonewall will be our first national monument to tell the story of the struggle for LGBT rights. I believe our national park should reflect the full story of our country, the richness and diversity and uniquely American spirit that has always defined us, that we are stronger together, that out of many, we are one.
I remember the late 1960s. Gay people were victims on a culture that had no respect, no tolerance,
We were being brutalized. We were being murdered. We were being ostracized in a sense.
Today, we have gay and lesbian elected officials. We see cultural changes in television and movies. President Obama has been the most proactive president for LGBT people in America. There is no second place.
We, the people, declare today that the most evident of truths, that all of us are created equal, is the star that guides us still. Just as it guided our forebears through Seneca Falls and Selma and Stonewall, just as it guided all those men and women, sung and unsung, who left footprints along this great mall, to hear a preacher say that we cannot walk alone, to hear a king proclaim that our individual freedom is inextricably bound to the freedom of every soul on earth.
So now you see, I am not just coming out with just baseless theories, but theories that has a more connection to what we are experiencing currently. And then the U.S. government, that's basically the Democrat Party, and we know they have control over UN, control over the World Bank, control over some of these institutions that they've instituted. And as third world countries, we know that third world countries heavily depend on aid, loans from the World Bank and from the West. And now looking at the current situation that we have at hand, but I think it's going to be very difficult for third world countries to really kick against these gay rights and whatever evil right that we have. So now that we have seen the political connection, let's also look at the spiritual connection. In one of my videos, I talk about the satanic evil agenda of the US dollar. And as we know, money is power. And then when you have money, you control people. And the United States has smartly taken advantage of this and instituted the US dollar as a world reserve currency. Now, let's look at the US dollar and look at something. If we take a cursory look at the US dollar bill, you will notice that there is a pyramid that is conspicuously registered on the dollar bill. Some people might look at this and just ignore. They might think that it's just a decoration and just ignore. But hey, it's not something to be ignored. In fact, if you look at that pyramid that's on the dollar bill, that pyramid is a whole summary of the world social classification of human beings. In fact, it's a summary of the whole social economic class of human beings. If you look at it closely, you realize that there are 3 layers that are at the top and the remaining layers down. And with that, we have a wide gap in between the 3 layers at the top and the remaining layers down. And then if you also take a closer look, the first layer on top, that's with the 3 layers, you notice there's an eye. There's a representation of an eye on that layer. See? Now, that eye there is not just put there for nothing. It is put there for a purpose. It is the eye of an Egyptian god, which is a Trinitarian god that consists of Isis, Osiris, and Horus, also known as the god of the underworld. And that eye there that represents this god is also known as the god of the eye of providence. So the people that are those 3 layers are also known as the people of the eye of providence, because they worship that God, and that God is what blesses them, that prospers them in whatever they do, whether evil or bad. And then this God promotes gay rights, abortion right. In fact, whatever that is evil, this God promotes. Now, who are these people that are at the? Let's look at the people that are in these 3 layers. The first top layer, where the eye is represented, that is where the world superpower nations are. And this include the G6, the G7, the G20 world billionaires and big time world scientists. That is where they are. Now, the remaining two layers. Who are those that are in these remaining two layers? This is where Hollywood superstars, musical stars are also represented. It might interest you to also know that, in fact, Hollywood is full of sacrifices, both blood sacrifice and then sexual, gay, lesbian sacrifices. And these people that are in these three layers, they all worship this Trinitarian God of Egypt. Most of them are actually gays and lesbians because they serve the God that they worship, and it's more like offering or sacrifice to the God that they serve. And these people will do everything possible to keep the remaining layers that are down impoverished. And how do they do this? This they do by rolling out wars, pandemics. People might think that wars across the globe, Africa, just happen because the people got up to agitate against each other. They are actually plotted behind the scene, and then they just pack a manches and it just blows up. Now, how would they do this? And we know anytime there are wars, there are pandemics, people get poorer. So they do this as a control tool to get people poorer so they can control the world. Now, let's come back to Africa, in fact, third world countries like Africa. Well, we might seem to always celebrate independence and then think that we are liberated from the West and from colonialism. But the painful truth is that we are still under colonialism. In fact, we are going through post-colonialism and then post-slavery. Why? Because we still depend on the West. We virtually still depend on the West and the US for everything. We are not on our own. Our political system is being controlled. Our economic system is being controlled. And now, why would these people do this? They do this because they want to be able to rule out some of these satanic agendas and shove them down our throat. Now, you will notice that we always sometimes condemn our political leaders. We condemn our leaders, thinking they are not revolutionary enough. But let's look at what happened to some of our African leaders that dared to be revolutionary enough. Let's look at the case of Gaddafi of Libya. What happened to him? When Gaddafi thought he wanted to liberate Africa, because people like Gaddafi and co are visionary. When they saw the need to liberate Africa, he got up to bring about one currency for Africa, a bank for Africa. That will be African Bank. The world smartly saw that the policy and the project this guy was bringing was going to hurt them. And then when the West noticed that, in fact, this thing that leader Gaddafi was bringing on board was going to liberate Africa, they got up quickly, used his own people, and eliminated him. And he's not the only one. Patrice Lumumba suffered the same fate. Thomas Sankara suffered the same fate. Our own first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, that was visionary. They saw that he was dangerous. Why? Because they don't want leaders that are visionary, that will liberate us from their shackles. They will eliminate those leaders. Now, we always insult and blame our African leaders, thinking that they are not revolutionary enough and they still go to the West cap in hand. But the issue is that not that they are not aware that they can also be revolutionary and visionary. The issue is that they are afraid, they are scared. And in fact, third world countries like Africa, we are being terrorized by the West. They are afraid if they do it, they will not last in government. So that is why, in fact, this situation that we are currently in is not as simple as we see it. And that is why I think that President Akufo Addo is really going to have a tough time in making this particular So if you look at it on both sides, spiritually and politically, this whole LGBTQ plus is something that will really be very difficult for us to deal with. Now, the West is watching, US is watching, Ghanaians are watching whether President Akufo Addo will sign this bill. The unfortunate thing is that once the US government, they control UN, they control the World Bank, they control some of these institutions. Once you disagree with their policies, they cut you off. That means you don't have access to their loans. You don't have access to anything that there's a privilege that you get from the West. And then looking at the reality on the ground, the economic situation the economic challenges that we are going through, the erratic power supply, the doomsday that we are experiencing now. We need money. The president needs money. And now, do you think President Akufo Addo will sign this bill, looking at the reality on the ground? Because right now he needs money. In case he does sign it, it means it's going to be detrimental to his government. So now he's having options to either sign this bill, get the praise from religious leaders, Ghanaians in general, the praise from parliament, or refuse to sign the bill, then get the praise from the US and the West. And in that case, his chances of getting loans from the West and other privileges will be secured so that he will come and solve the problem that we are going through. In case he thinks he's also bold enough and sign this document, that means that he's ready to face the detrimental consequences, which is going to be dire for his government and for Ghanaians. So this is the real situation that is at hand. Now, one might think that it's only Ghana that started this whole thing. Let's look at Uganda. When the Ugandan government thought they were bold enough to pass a bill against this LGBTQ plus thing, the World Bank warned them outrightly that they will no longer have access to their loans. And in fact, anything that is of a privilege that comes from the US and the West, Uganda will be cut off completely. So now we are watching to see how things will go down with Uganda. And currently, the person that is on the hit right now is President Akufo Addo, because he knows what is at stake with this particular LGBTQ plus issue. And maybe we are watching to see whether one day we'll have a strong African political leader who will get up and then say, no, enough is enough, take the bull by the horn and fight for the liberation of Africa from this post-colonial slavery. Well, guys, I thank you for sticking and staying around from the beginning to the end of this video. In fact, we shall be coming your way with a part 2 version of this, which is more detailed. You get to understand the spiritual connection of it and how that is deeply rooted politically. In order to catch up with the video, make sure to subscribe and then like this video. And then, in fact, I want to hear from you. Do you think President Akufo Addo will sign the document? If yes, let me know your thoughts on the comment section. And if no, let me know your thoughts on the comment section. I thank you for sticking and staying around. I see you again another time with another video. Bye-bye.